everybody. It's Laura Boone with the Real Ethereal Show. And I have a special guest today, Ursula Lentini, my friend and fellow host. Ursula, I have to plug her. She does amazing work, so I'm going to get right to that right at the beginning. UrsulaLentini.com. Let me spell that for you. URSULALENTINE.com. Go there. She is a very experienced pranic healer. She has devoted a lot of her life's work to subconscious healing and work. She's a licensed minister, probably a lot of other things. She's got a big life and a big roster of things that she's a master of, and we're going to use that as a segue into why we're here today. We're going to do an installment into my Enneagram series, and as you guys know, and I just want to stop for a second and thank all the people that have given me feedback about the other Enneagram shows that I've hosted. I just think it's an amazing system. So today we're going to talk about fives. And Ursula took the test online, right? And I'm going to plug where she took the test. It was the EnneagramInstitute.com is a great free place. And I think you eventually took the other test is what, $15 is the more extensive test?
Yes.
Yes.
I took a couple free ones, and they asked similar questions, but I didn't feel it was accurate, and sure enough, they came out completely two different things.
Right.
So I said, no, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel right. And I said, okay, let me go to the Institute. And then I think it was a $12 fee or whatever. And I said,
Right.
oh, heck yeah. So I did that, and it was much longer, more in-depth.
Right.
And gave a several-page report, as well as described the other types of Enneagrams.
And Ursula, we talked, sometimes it's hard to tell your number right away. And that's very common. So Ursula was mostly a 5-1, but I know one of the second runner-ups was 1. She was a 5, and one of the runner-ups was 1. Which a lot of times, some of these types, you guys, they resemble each other. And 1 definitely fives can be confused as 1s. So that made a lot of sense. But how we figured it out, or actually I didn't figure it out for her. We all have to figure it out for ourselves. But what I did is kind of talk through what the 5's qualities were, disintegrations were, and Ursula was like, ding, ding, ding. Now that I know more about it, that feels so right to me. So that's really the process and the journey. And even if just the process and the journey can be a great discovery for someone to just start to look at themselves.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yeah, because we're such a mystery. When people are dating other people, they're like, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, but then even when we look at ourselves, we're like, what? How? Why? So the Enneagram is a really good definer.
Yes.
So then when you said, hey, are you this, are you this, are you this, are you this? And I was like, check. And I'm like, oh. Then I started seeing my motivation and
Yes.
the way I approach things, or the way
Yes.
I resist things, or the way I react to things, because we're so multidimensional at any given point.
Right.
Just between the mental and the emotional. Forget spiritual, ancestral, historical, all of those other influences. Our every thought, our every word is already packed with influence.
Right. Which is, so she's being a 5 right now. Let me explain how she's being a 5. She is being very analytical about an idea, and she's looking at all the background of it and categorizing all the background of it and pulling from a lot of knowledge and trying to teach it and express it, because she's got a lot of knowledge, which gets us to the nicknames. All the numbers have nicknames. Type 5 is called lots of things, but I'm just going to reel some of them off. She's being...
Are you going to call me names now?
I'm going to call you names. She's being some of these right now. The investigator, the thinker, the innovator, the observer, big time, the observer, the specialist, the radical, and the expert. Okay? They all, everybody is an individual, and everybody expresses these things in their own beautiful individual way. And, you know, people ask me all the time, well, that's not a very good type. Or, well, like, you know, 8s always get it. 5s get it a lot too. But 8s and 5s, some others. I'm like, no, they're all good. They all represent at their highest energies something that we all need. So we all can learn from every type, and we all need a little bit of what every type teaches at its best. So let's get into some of the qualities of a 5, some of the reasons 5s become who they are, and we're going to talk about how to become more healthy as a 5 and what it looks like when you disintegrate as a 5. And then we're going to get some expert examples from a 5 as we do that. Okay. Let me talk about behaviors that relate to 5s. So some of the ways that you can describe 5s through some of their behaviors, highly private. They need quiet. They need time alone. They need their own space. All of them. Even if they're in a big family or living with a lot of people, they need their little nook where they can go. They are very autonomous, typically. They underemphasize relationship. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that they don't think relationships are important. You've built your life around relationships, but they're very about the self and being independent and really doing your own work. That's paramount, right? Not fixing everybody else. And you actually teach people how to be more independent. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I want to talk about the basic fear. That every number has a basic fear, and it doesn't mean this is the only fear that they have. But first of all, 5s are about fear. Conquering it or being enveloped by it. That's their struggle. How do I conquer my fear? How do I navigate fear in my life? One of their big fears in their family of origin is of being helpless, useless, incapable. A lot of times there was something overwhelming in the family. There was something that was a lot going on, whether it was a personality or, you know, that maybe it was a big personality. Maybe it was just a lot of noise in some way or another. And 5s retreated from that into here. She's totally nodding your head.
Totally.
So does that resonate?
Yes.
Okay. How? Can you give us any anecdotes at all? You retreated in your family. You went and found your quiet space.
Yeah, because so many thoughts are coming right now.
Isn't it incredible?
It is. Yeah.
When you start to...
Yeah, so when you just said that last little bit, I have a mouth on me, said my dad informed me, like you and your mouth. So I spoke my truth. And coming in, you know, as people who are doing light work or healing work, this isn't our first rodeo. So I kind of came in and I was a awake kid. And I had different dimensions that I was aware of and thought everybody else was too.
Let me add to that too. All 5s are highly intelligent. Right. It's part of how they go down that path. Because they have so much quickness going on up here and such a capacity up here, mm-hmm. They need to do something with it. But go ahead.
Okay, so, see? Yes. So I would speak my truth, and I would tell my dad, like, you're not being a good dad, you need to do this and this and this and that. And of course, you know, that's not cool. So my dad would shut me down all the time. And he and I would go at it my whole childhood. And he always won because he was the bigger guy, you know, and he was the one in charge of my house.
You had lost already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it till many years later. But I remember as a child at one point, it got so hurtful that I wasn't being heard, that I wasn't being honored, that I wasn't being, and my heart just hurt so much. And I was just crying and crying and crying. I remember very clearly. It was a pivotal point in my life anyway, the whole timeline. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to feel anymore. I'm not going to cry anymore. That's it. I'm done with these emotions. I'm, locking the door and throwing away the key. Then you move it, and then I moved into my head.
Well, can I just? You're literally reading my notes on 5s. So I wrote, after my research, they get to a point where they decide that they're going to guard themselves.
There it is.
In my notes. They decide that the way to guard themselves in the system that they're in is to isolate, introvert. They decide that they need to be alone, and they go to their mind. They love their minds, and they find solace in their thinking. So that's pretty much
That's exactly what happened.
Okay.
At an early age.
Yeah.
But the interesting piece is in the spiritual path, you can't stay in the mind because the mind is the ego. Mm-hmm. So the spiritual path is about digging the way back down into the heart and being in a relationship with the heart and therefore accessing the soul.
Right. Well, we're kind of jumping ahead, but I'm fine with that because you're talking about, well, how do I heal? Okay. And, fives, if you've watched my other shows, you'll know every number has arrows. And what that means is points to other numbers that can be a path to integration that suit them, because everybody has their own path, right? So fives integrate to 8 and they disintegrate to 7. So let's talk about what that means. You were kind of describing it. 8s, heart-centered. 8s are heroic. 8s take action. 8s get involved. They express themselves. They stake their claim of space in this world, right? They're heroic about staking their claim for space.
Nice.
So a 5 retreats. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm saying? And they go up here, right? And 8s put you back in your body, and they say, wait a minute, I'm in the physical world. I need to take action. I need to take my place. I need to let everybody know I'm here and what's going on with my heart. Isn't that interesting?
That's super interesting.
So it's the Enneagram, and I keep pounding on this. Sometimes if we read where we integrate to, it just gives us these, you've already kind of come to that from other means, but, all 5s could use a little more 8.
That's awesome.
They can learn from the 8.
So do 5s and 8s hang out together? Like, do they balance each other?
They can, but, I think every number can hang out with each other. I think it's less about what numbers fit and more about how integrated and healthy everyone is in the number that they are.
Okay.
Because we all need the gift that every number brings. And they're all so beautiful and different. So you integrate to 8, which 8 is a call to action from your heart.
Nice.
Okay? They disintegrate to 7. So let's talk about what that means. You were talking about going in your head. Well, 7s start getting really busy and they disassociate from their emotions even more. So 5s at times can disintegrate into just finding more and more stimulation, being busy, and just kind of looking up and going, wait a minute. Where's all my time gone? And they do that. It's a form of disassociation that is also pleasure seeking. Okay, so does that resonate with you? I know that's what Jamie did. I said, "What do you think about that?" And she was just like,
"Yeah."
So
people who are like, "I know you're really busy." They always say, "I know you're busy," and blah blah blah. And I am busy. For me, I have a lot of energy. Being on the spiritual path, the deal is the more kind of stuff you get out of the way, the more energy comes through. And I've always been No, I haven't always been. I like life and I like to be involved. I've also lived in isolation. So
when has that become like 7 and disassociation? When does it become unhealthy? Like medicating in some way?
When I get too busy? Well, I will. I'll look up and go, how long have I been living in Atlanta? And like 17 years go by and you're like, what? So things like that. Or I'm always like, oh, what time is it? Now, it was like that before, but now time doesn't really, I don't know how to describe that. But before I was like, where's the time gone? Oh my God, it's already, and I'm always kind of was running late and things like that because I get single focused and I get involved. Mm-hmm. I've done lots of projects and works and different things like that. So I
sounds so
totally
like too much 7.
Get busy.
Too much 7.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit too about fives, how fives disintegrate, because we're talking about how fives go to seven, but let's just talk about some five traits.
Okay.
Paranoia.
So my godson and I have conspiracy theory kind of conversations all the time.
Fives invented the conspiracy theory. Fives did. They invented it. Okay. So yeah. So you have to have you figured out that you can start to latch on and obsess and get in your head with that, and like, have you learned how to back yourself up out of that?
I have.
Okay.
I have, because we'll talk to him. I'll talk to him because I think he's the observer, which is five. Too, right?
Oh my gosh! So here these two fives get together. And
yeah.
Have you read this on the internet? Have you seen this? Look at this evidence of this.
So he's saturated in that world, and we'll talk, and I'll be like, no, because I'll be more logical about the things that he's saying. But then stuff will start happening in the world, and I'm like, oh, he was right. The world's coming to an end.
Yes.
And then on our spiritual path, we're talking about light and darkness and dark and the fight there.
Yes.
And then the world coming to an end, and like, do I have enough water in my house? And stuff like that.
Five energy is about five, and again, this is five. In its highest form is the Girl Scout motto, be prepared, which is really good. We all need some of that. Mm-hmm. But when they take it to what's the negative or stressed version of that, is being paranoid, is being so focused on the negative outcome, living in fear. Fives are the ones that have the, bunkers underneath their homes. And, and there's some of that is, it's the three little pigs. The one that built the brick house was a five. Mm-hmm. Okay, while everybody else was,
goofing around,
doing or yelling or laughing or partying or, talking about it. Fives were over here do.
Like the squirrel putting the nuts in the ground.
Exactly. It's a very isolated. When it's really negative, it's an isolated kind of fear-based, introverted hyper focus that fives get in. At its best, it's a be prepared, it's a be knowledgeable, let me get educated about this. The other thing about fives that, it can be good or bad, right? Healthy or unhealthy. Fives learn really early on to lean on their own understanding. They're not swayed easily by what people say. They do lots of research and become an expert. They find comfort in education. They find comfort in finding their own facts. They find comfort in forming their own opinions by finding their own facts. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Okay. That's
because every area that I've trained in, I've gone all the way to the top. So even when I did real estate, I was on the board of Atlanta Board of Realtors. Instead of just a real estate agent, I became a broker, and then I went to the board, and different things. Or if I volunteer for 10 years, not 2 years. Things like that. Right. So with the paranoia thing and the conspiracy thing, so I have water in my house, and that's about it. I don't have the gas mask. I haven't dug a hole in the yard yet, But
you thought about it.
But I'm aware. I'm like, do I need to do that? Because we have these conversations, and but I also and because of the spiritual path. So it's very interesting as you're talking about this. I'm like, and then now on the spiritual path, it's taken me in a different direction, or it's soothed those things, and I'm living more in trust rather than paranoia.
Yes.
But I am aware. So when you say be prepared, I like to hear about possibilities of direction, so I know what I need to do today and now. Because if we're headed down in that stream, the apocalypse or whatever, then I need to be like, okay, what do I need to do today in order to prepare for that? So
Five.
And I'm a lifetime member of the Girl Scouts community. So
Girl Scouts are literally a five organization.
See?
They're like that energy's five organization. So on that note, let's talk about another quality of five. And again, it could be healthy or it can be unhealthy, taken in the extreme. But fives become experts. They love to learn everything they possibly can about a topic and become a master of it when they are unhealthy in that regard, they kind of hole away, they lose contact with people, and they get so focused on what it is they're learning about or becoming.
Like the mad scientist scenario.
When they are healthy, they really become, again, experts. They understand all the facets and nuances to things they want to continue learning. They seek out masters. And then here's what we love about, here's the healthy five. They, with humility, become teachers.
Because you have to, almost.
They want to share, they realize their gifts, and they want to, with an eight's heart, take action with the knowledge that they have and give it to others. Okay? That's when a five... Yes.
I'm telling you. So listen, when you say, isolation and privacy and things like that,
Yes.
My favorite time is just alone in my house, hanging out in my backyard, like I'm at peace. I'm in total peace, everything's great. And that's my preference, really. So when you say then we go and we get to a place of sharing the knowledge, I'm hosting a talk show.
So what's interesting about that, Ursula, is that with you having this show, fives are not ego-centered in terms of attention. Their motivation is not necessarily to be in front of everything. Their motivation truly is to teach or give back.
Thank you for saying that.
There are other numbers that are not like that, and that's fine. Like, good for them. 8s, 3s, they want attention, and that's okay. There are people that need that. But 5s, actually, it really, I believe, it's an indication of your consciousness as a 5 and your higher frequency of being a 5, and probably all the self-work you've done, that you are now saying, I can't just sit in my house by myself all the time with all this knowledge. What can I do with all this expertise that I have? How can I help? I mean, would you?
Totally. You're speaking, you're in here and it's coming
Like,
out
I need
of your
to get
mouth.
out and go do this.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when I do public speaking or do a Sunday service minister or, just the talk show and everything, people are like, oh, aren't you afraid to speak in front of people? And I'm like, it's not even a consideration because, there's no room for fear. You just have to get up there and do it. Like, you have to do it.
Because there's a reason you're doing it. There's a heartfelt reason you're doing it. Let's talk about famous fives for a second, because I think it helps for people to even get a more crystallized version of what fives are. First of all, your neighborhood librarian is probably a 5. Your any type of researcher of any kind, whether it be scientific or anything, really. A lot of people in academia are 5s, especially the ones that, would rather not talk to anybody and, they're just really in their own world, finding out what they need to discover. I mean, they invent things, they make these discoveries. I'm sure a lot of Nobel Prize winners are 5s, and they probably hated the spotlight, those types. So on that note, Albert Einstein, pure 5.
Yay! I'm in good company.
He's a pure 5.
I love him. He's awesome.
Pure 5.
I love Albert Einstein.
And even in here, the science thing, okay, that's obvious why he's a 5. But I want to talk about, other things about him that were so 5. As he was working on things, he was, I don't want to say paranoid, he had concern about where his nuclear technology
Was going to go.
would take. I mean, he was already starting to worry about, he thought about all those scenarios. See his brain, the 5, all those different scenarios he was already starting to publish and think about. I thought that was really interesting. Stephen Hawking, 5. Let's talk about some artists, because, there are as many different types of artist personalities as there are different types of people personalities. But let's think about some of the more expert, isolating masters of their craft artists. George O'Keeffe, pure 5. She would sit and paint the same antler over and over and over and over again, because you know what? It wasn't quite right. And she studied the light 24 hours a day on the same thing by herself, lived out in the middle of nowhere by herself, but was so productive. 5. Doing this all in her head, doing all this research. So productive with this talent, what she left us with. Amazing. Vincent van Gogh. 5. Completely isolated. In a lot of ways, some of the negative aspects of 5, but in the positive aspects, I mean, happen to love him. I've read a lot of his letters. And a lot of his letters are just about how he was studying light. He was doing research, visual research, constantly, just in the minutiae. So look at the work he produced. Kurt Cobain, 5. So he's, this produced all this beautiful stuff, did all this research, was very isolated, but kind of went into that paranoia, needed to medicate. At the end, really, when he was at his worst, I remember just interviews, and some of the things he was doing, he was paranoid, so paranoid, that everybody was out to get him. He couldn't trust anybody. It was really sad. Charles Darwin. I think that speaks to the part of a 5 that people don't talk about. They talk about it with 8, being mavericks and not caring what people think. But 5s really, really can go their own way. And Charles Darwin, prime example, he just kept his head down. He didn't think about what anybody else was doing. He didn't accept, in that kind of paranoid way, but in a healthy way. He questioned authority. 5s question authority. There you go. They question authority. That's another big thing about a 5.
So you fighting with my dad.
Question authority. Yeah. So Charles Darwin, we wouldn't have those amazing, groundbreaking theories of evolution if he had not been the 5 that he was and questioned authority. And then he went and in minutiae, with tenacity and painstaking detail, went and collected evidence. 5. To he wasn't like, in my heart I feel like this is true. That had nothing to do with it.
I'll prove it. It was his point of view.
One of my favorites, I kind of saved her for last, Amelia Earhart. Right, so Maverick was really on her own. I think one of the reasons why she was so lovable is that, and if you even read about her, she wasn't necessarily about the fame. She was very much about
the adventure.
The adventure, and also the dynamics of flight. She was so prepared. And I know her plane went down, but she was one that really just the data as a navigator. She was so incredibly smart and intelligent and was so prepared. And really didn't think about what anybody else thought about her.
You say navigator. That rings.
They're big navigators.
Yep, that rings. Like when you said it, I felt this thing go right in here. Like, yep.
Now, how does that relate?
In the subconscious work.
Yeah. Speak more. I love that. Speak more about that.
So in the subconscious, it's
finding a map.
It's another reality, and one of the phrasings I use to explain to people, I'm your GPS. So I can navigate the terrain of the subconscious. I know the system down there, and I know the patterns and the trends and the causes and effects. So I navigate that.
I had a session with you, and I think one way that you really exhibited this, and an aspect of 5, is that, part of your work is that, I went into a meditative state, and then you take individuals back to their family of origin and back to some of their original wounds, and you try to help put visualization to that and help people kind of move through those emotions. And you were, the observer. And you were also a very detached observer, but you were also there at the same time. But there was a feeling of peace that you were not connecting too much. Like I felt like I could be as emotional as I needed to be because you were going to be very observant and not try to get too involved.
Right.
That's a 5. That's a 5. You're not going to run in and try to save me. You're not going to try to, like a 2 would, meld with me, which isn't really safe when someone's going into a space. The safeness is your just ability to truly be a compassionate observer.
Because that's where we were saying that, like at the top of the show, how you do your own work and then you provide space for other people to do their work. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm providing a safe space for them to do their work, because I'm like 3 steps ahead of them, and I'm conscious of all the things, and there's a lot going on. So it's like I create this safe environment for you to be accountable and do your own work and do your own healing, and I'm guiding you every step of the way and allowing the transformation from pain to release to incorporating other qualities that we would rather have or that we truly have, and we're just reclaiming them. So
with a 5's objective analytical observation,
and then with the compassion that it's hard work, but hey, hang in there, because in 5 minutes you're going to be free from this burden you've had your whole life.
Yeah. I think in conclusion, what I always like to say about each number is that they all have a gift to give us. And I really want to, Ursula, and you exemplify some of these gifts just amazingly. But I want to just remind us all, and I thank 5s. I thank each number for the gifts that they bring the earth, right? They bring humanity. Thank you, 5s. Thank you, Ursula, for teaching us how to have boundaries, teaching us how to respect the individual, teaching us that knowledge is power, that being prepared and being knowledgeable and being educated is power, and then also teaching us that once you have your education, that it is so even more powerful to teach others, to give others that power, to teach themselves. So, thank you.
My goodness. Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. I feel seen and celebrated, and you're so sweet about everything.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you for your generosity.
Well, thank you for being here and being so vulnerable and open about your life and your experiences being a 5.
Thank you.
Right? Coming out of your isolation.
Right. Bring it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Namaste.
you. Namaste. Thank you.